Alright, welcome back to the channel. So what I want to do today is I want to start getting into some Clone Wars content, some actual gameplay type stuff. Um, Things are starting to release. A few places have already received their stuff. The store that I pre-ordered from looks like they're not sure, but it might not be till Monday till they get their shipment. A little bit of a bummer. Not that I was going to get a lot of games in this weekend anyways due to COVID, but I do want to get my hands on it and do a live unboxing for you all. Might just have to have a delay on that. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm still hopeful maybe that they'll get it by tomorrow. So what I want to do is I want to start getting in and create my first list. I'm going to create a Separatist list today. But before I do, I want to just talk about Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder. It's mine and a lot of people's favorite Armada Fleet Builder. You might even say that there's a consensus that this might be the best Armada Fleet Builder. There are others. There's others that are good. I love this one. I love this one as a TO. I ask my players, do your list in Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder and print it out and bring it to the tournament. They can give it to me. It's formatted excellently. I can figure everything out. And I know if it was done in Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder, all the rules have been followed. There are other fleet builders where they just give you a message saying, well, with this upgrade you have to be careful because we're only checking for this part of it and we're not checking for everything. So that you could, even with those fleet builders, end up with a potentially illegal list. But with Ryan Kingston, he makes sure that everything is set and ready to go. Now, a couple things about Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder. The first one, the one complaint that I get from people is that you can't save your lists with Armada with Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder. That's not true. If you can save the list, but it's only going to save to that device and browser. So if you create a list on one computer and then you want to go to your tablet and modify it later, you won't be able to do that without having an account. To get an account, you do have to make a donation. The nice thing is the donation can be any amount that you want. I would say for most people, it's usually around $10, and you only have to do it once, and you have an account and you're set up. Now, some of us, like me, like to try and send Ryan Kingston maybe $10 a year or something like that. It's not a huge financial expense for you, but for me, it's highly worth it. The list builder is worth it. But if you only want to send him a couple of bucks, send him a couple of bucks. He'll set up an account. Now, you do have to make sure at least when I did this, it's not a super secure password. So don't use a password that you use for other things. Come up with something simple for this that is only going to be for Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder because it's not super secure. Now we're going to look at some stuff before because he's just updated this to have all of the new Clone Wars content in it. So I wanted to show you this in one browser just to show what it's going to look like if you're first time to Ryan Kingston. Now, from myself, I already have some lists. And now the only thing that I have to say about Ryan Kingston Fleet Builder that I would like to be a little bit different is to have some sort of batch delete. I create so many lists on this that my number of lists gets really long. I've gone through recently and cleaned up a bunch of rebel fleets that I definitely wasn't going to revisit anymore. Imperial fleets, I still have a ways to go in terms of deleting, and you have to do it one at a time. It's a little bit of a pain, so I would love to have a batch delete, but that's my problem, not Ryan's. It's a great fleet builder and I highly recommend it. And I do recommend that if you find that you like it a lot too, try it first, but if you do like it and you want to be able to save across multiple platforms, send Ryan a couple of bucks, get yourself an account. It's well worth it. And now you can see down here he has added the Republic, the Separatists, and new layout coming soon. So that's kind of exciting. So something's going to change. Now I think it might just be that he's reformatting things to the new sizes of the cards. You'll see when we go in to create our lists that the ship cards for the new stuff are stretched a little bit. Just a little bit. But I think that's because he has it set up for the tarot sized cards, and the new cards might be stretching a little bit when he's putting it into his layout. So that might be part of it. It might be because the ship cards are two-sided now. Maybe he wants to have some sort of way to be able to display all the information in one spot. I don't know. Maybe he has bigger and better plans going. Now, one thing I will say, for old lists, if you've had this for a while, if I go into one of my old lists here, you'll see that there are some exclamation points on some cards. So I have Strategic Advisor in this list. Strategic Advisor is no longer a competitive card. Also an exclamation point on Grand Moff Tarkin. Grand Moff Tarkin got a reduction to 28 points, which you can see here. It has it there. But the system has saved his old point cost is 38. So all I have to do is get rid of Grand Moff Tarkin and add him back in, and now my list is 10 points cheaper than it was. And this is just telling you that this is the points cost is not reflected in the new points, reflective of the new points, or that the card is invalid. So if you have an old list, just make sure you don't have any of these, because your list won't be valid if you go to a tournament. So let's go into the Separatists, and I've been doing a lot of theory crafting in terms of what I want to do for lists. Interestingly, for the Republic, I have a really good idea of what I want to do for a squad ball. I haven't thought about the ships as much. Separatists kind of the opposite. I've done a lot of theory crafting on the ships. Don't have a great sense of a squad ball. I think there's a lot more synergies with the Republic squads that I have come up with so far than there is with the Separatists. And I think that's probably thematic. A lot of the Separatists are out for their own skin type of a thing. And I think that's reflective in a lot of the mechanics. So let's go into the Separatists, and you'll see this is a really clean layout. This is what I like about it. Not a lot of extra text, not a lot going on. There are no ads, nothing like that. Great fleet builder. So we're going to click add ship, and we see the 4 ships that we have available to us. Now what I'm going to do to start, I'm going to go with a couple of Munificents. My order, I've got 2 Separatists starters coming. It's going to be way more hard sells than I'll probably ever play in a list. Honestly, I don't see playing more than 2, maybe sometimes. I might, for fun, at some point just throw all 4 in a list and have a fun game of it at some point, but I don't think it's going to be competitive. But we're going to start with our Municipant class comms frigate. This is the ship that I'm most excited about, although the hard sail transport is really interesting, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the Municipant class comms frigate, I like. This is going to be your large carrier. It's got the 3 squadron. It's got the red anti-squadron, which is great. The only weird thing I find about it is both Munificents have the exact same dice. They both have an ion cannon upgrade. The ion cannon upgrades, generally speaking, require blue dice. Not 100%. There's one that add blue dice to the sides, which is a possibility. But I find it hard to put the ion cannon upgrade in on this one just because you've got only got those 2 blue dice that you have to work with. So one of these, so this one I'm not going to actually have an ion cannon, but let's talk about commanders first. So we only have our 2 options. Let's talk about Kraken first. So Kraken I find really interesting. I actually find him the most interesting of the 2 commanders that we have options for right now, and I'll talk about that when I talk about Dooku. My problem right now is the ships we have right now don't benefit Kraken a lot. Once per activation, while a friendly ship is attacking a ship, if another friendly ship is at close to medium range, that's the problem. The attacker may change 1 die to a face with 1 icon and no other icons. So he's helping your dice. It's making your dice roll better every single time. So because you're rolling a lot of red dice, you're going to roll blanks, and now you can have a crit, or you can have a single hit, or an accuracy if you want it. The problem is the close to medium range. The Munificents want to generally be at long range. They'll probably get into medium range. You really don't want them at close range, though. The same with the hard cells. You don't want them at close range. Now, with the battle refit hard cell, I think with Kraken, you're going to want a battle to start until there's more ships available. You're going to probably, to make Kraken work, need a battle refit hard cell and make it as tanky as you possibly can. And you can make it relatively tanky and kind of throw it in, at the beginning of one turn. You're going to throw it in, get it into the medium to close range of some 6 ships. Then your others, your Munificents, if you have 2 of them, they're going to get their shots, get their improved dice. Then the next turn, you're going to activate the Munificents first, and hopefully the hard cell is still there and you're getting the benefit out of it. But the problem is that hard cell is going to be sitting there in the teeth of your opponent for almost 2 complete turns, and it's probably not going to survive no matter how tanky you make it. So that's kind of my problem with Kraken. In the hard cell, it is a small ship. It is a stronger small ship defensively, but it's a small ship and it's just not going to survive a real long time being that close to other ships. So let's look at Dooku. Now both of these commanders are both 30 points, so there's no cost issue at the moment in terms of which commander you take for the Separatists. You don't have to think about the cost at all. It's not a factor. But you do have to have a commander, so you have to pick one or the others of these. So 30 of your points, no matter what, to start with Separatists are going to be to your commander. And you have to pick one. So Dooku's who we're going to go with here. I don't like him, and let's talk about why. Now, for those of you that have been into the game, you might understand this a little bit better, but for those that are new, raid is a mechanic that's been in the game for a couple of waves now, and it's never really taken off as a big mechanic in the game. People have tried it, people try doing different things with it, but it's never been a super effective way to accomplishing your goals in the game to this point. And Dooku deals with raid. Now, this does say you must choose at least 2 types of command tokens for this card. So you can do 3 different, or you can do 2 of one and 1 of the other. But you can't do all the same, which, that's fine. It does weaken him a little bit by giving that restriction. Then at the start of each ship phase, and you're going to have 6 turns, 6 ship phases. There's only 3 tokens on here. So you're going to pick the 3 that you want to do. You may discard 1 command token from this card. If you do, each enemy ship gains a raid token matching that command token. And what a raid token does is your opponent, if they want to run that command and they have a raid token, they can't. The only way to get rid of the raid token is either to spend a matching token of the same type. So if you have raid for squadron, you have to spend a squadron token, and then you can do it. Or you spend a dial and you get rid of all raid tokens. And that's really an expensive way to deal with it, is to spend a dial. So a lot of times, people try and have tokens ready. The other thing is if if you're unclear on what your opponent is trying to do, you might pick the wrong tokens to give them raid, and they weren't going to run that command anyways, and then they don't care. I'm going to give you nav. Well, I'm not going to, I've got Admiral Ozzel who's just gotten a change. I don't need to run nav at all. You're not hurting me at all with, nav raid, that kind of a thing. My biggest problem with this card is that you're telegraphing to your opponent what you're going to do in terms of what raid you're going to do. Okay, I see my opponent, they have a lot of squadrons. They're going to be running lots of squadron commands. I'm going to put 2 squadron on this, and then my other one, depending on what it is, maybe nav, maybe engineering. Personally, I'm not going to do concentrate fire unless I know my opponent likes to run concentrate fire a lot. So I would, based on their fleet, pick nav or engineering for the other one. And now they know that that's what I want to do, so they're going to prep. First turn, I'm going to get that token. I need to push squadrons with this ship. I'm going to get that squadron token on there so that when he raids my squadrons, I can get rid of it. So what I would probably end up doing with Dooku is, in that scenario, my opponent has a bunch of squadrons I know they're going to want to push. Probably turn 1, I'm going to give them a squad raid. So they're going to have to deal with that right away. I figured they know they're going to have to deal with that. So they're going to get that squadron command turn 1 to get rid of the token. Now they're spending their dial instead of banking the token in order to get rid of it. I think, that's a decent way. And then hopefully by turn 3 or 4, they aren't prepared to have to deal with the raid, so that they're having to spend dials and stuff instead of just getting rid of the token. And generally speaking, I think with Dooku, you probably want to do the raid earlier rather than later. Make them have to deal with it. But that's just my thought right now with Dooku. Again, I'm hoping that there's going to be better commanders coming for the Separatists. But for now, this is who we're going to go with. Now, for the rest of the Municipant comms frigate, let's talk about titles first of all. So your comms frigate is going to be the one that you want to push squadrons with, which means you want to be a little bit further back from the fight. And the Municipant wants to be at mostly long to medium range anyways. So, and as opposed to the other Municipant, which are going to be a little bit more battle ready, I'm going to go with the Sal Nalor title for this one. And what that's going to let me do is, the Sal Nalor is, as long as I'm at speed 2, so I am going to have to go at my maximum speed to get this effect, which is okay. I think the Municipant comms frigate, one of the benefits of it is, if you're running at speed 2, you've got 3 out of 4 clicks of nav. That's pretty good. You're generally not going to have to worry about running running nav commands. So I'm okay running at speed 2 with this, and kind of trying to strafe around the edges of my opponents if I can. And I will be able to use one of my defense tokens. Instead of that token's effect, I get to use it as an evade. And I think this is a really good ability, because you have 3 defense tokens. This ability, if you can line it up right, they're not going to be able to accuracy this. And if your opponent has a large ship that they're shooting at you with, well, if you're going to be able to stay at long range, you're going to be able to cancel 2 dice. That's pretty good because you're going to be smaller than your opponent. You're going to be able to cancel 2 dice. It's like, okay, you accuracy my brace. Well, I'm just going to use my redirect instead of its effect. I'm going to use the redirect in order to make it an evade, and I'm going to cancel 2 of your dice, which might be the same or even better than the brace effect would have been anyway. So I think it's a good title, especially for a Munificent that you want to be keeping at long range. Now, in terms of an officer for this one, I'm going to go with the T-Series Tactical Droid. I think this is a really good, a really good officer. I could be completely wrong. We might end up getting into games and T-Series Tactical Droid is terrible, but I don't think the T-Series Tactical Droid is going to be terrible. I think the T-Series is going to be pretty good, because you're going to basically get 2 commands a turn if you can line it up right. You can't use Concentrate Fire on this. Now, if you're big on Concentrate Fire, that's fine. Run that on your dial, and then you're going to be able to use the T-Series for another command, so that's pretty good. You just can't use the T-Series to do a Concentrate Fire, but you can use any of the other 3 commands. As long as you're only going to do 1 command token, you can do that 1 command token as a dial instead. Pretty good. So I'm going to go with that. Then, in terms of the offensive retrofit, remember we're going to be pushing squadrons with this one. Now, we could go with expanded hangar bay to get an extra squadron out of it. We could go with boosted comms in order to be able to activate at long range. That would not be a bad idea. We could use reserve hangar deck in order to be able to bring back a squadron for 3 points. Not a bad idea, especially with Separatists. A lot of cheap squadrons. It's a good way to keep your squad ball going. But initially, to start, I really want to try the Hyperwave signal boost. I think it's potentially a pretty good card. It is close to long range, so you're almost getting boosted comms out of it. You don't have to be in regular activation range to be able to do it. They can be a little bit further out. And if they have the AI trait, they can use the AI trait when they attack. They can't move, but I think we have a lot of AI with, the Separatists. I think that's going to be pretty good. Now we're going to have to use either Squadron or engineering token in order to refresh this, but we're hopefully going to have ways later on to be able to do that. Now, we're not going to do an ion cannon on this one, but we will do a turbo laser, and for this, so many red dice, including the red flak. I think Link Turbo Laser Towers is probably going to be stapled to a lot of Munificents because of that. It's attacking. It has 2 different effects, and its attacking effect is not limited to ships or squadrons. It can be both, and you can re-roll 1 red die in your attack pool. I mean, this is great for the red flak, because the red flak, you're going to roll blanks, but you're going to get a re-roll in every single red flak that you roll. That's really good. But then, if you are flacking your opponent, you pick the one squadron that you're most concerned about, the one that you want to deal with first, and you roll your 1 flak. If you get a result that you wanted, if you get that double, or if you get an accuracy out of it, because it's a scatter ace, well, now you can decide, okay, I'm going to forego shooting at the rest of the squadrons, but I'm going to use the Link Turbo Laser Towers in order to add 2 more red dice, because that's the only color in terms of this Munificent that's going to be in our flak. throw 2 more red dice. So we've now got three red dice, potentially doing a lot of damage. And we can then still go back and use our other ability while attacking to if one of those 3 red dice rolls a blank, re-roll it. You know, I think it's a really good way to go. So we're definitely going to go with Link Turbo Laser Towers on this one for the attacking part. But again, this one we're going to be running a lot of squadron commands with it. Probably running squadron commands and then either use the T-Series Tactical Droid for engineering. Probably. We're probably not going to worry about the nav. And the way I would do this is I'd probably bank. I might even bank a nav early on, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. I'd bank a nav maybe first turn because I don't need a squadron or anything like that. I'll just start them at speed 2 and I'm good to go. I'll bank that nav for the refresh because I want to be able to refresh, get at least one good refresh out of this T-Series Tactical Droid without generating other tokens to do it. Alright, for our second ship, we are going to go with a Star Frigate. So this is your more battle-ready version of the Municipant. And because this one is going to be looking to fight more, it probably means it's going to get attacked more. So we want to make this as tanky as possible. And the interesting thing about the Munificents is, you know, they have decent shields all around. They're not the most, and they have good engineering. Their hull is okay at 6. 6 is decent, but not great. But there appear to be a lot of good ways in order to make your ship, make these Munificents pretty hardy so that they can take some shots and survive. And so that's what I'm going to do with this one. You know, I need to focus on the attack portion as well on this, but because it's going to probably be getting attacked more, I need to also make sure that this is somewhat survivable. So we're going to start with our title, and we're going to start with the Tide of Progress title. Tide of Progress, before you're dealt a face-up damage card with the ship trait. So you're restricting yourself. It's only one type of damage card, but it's significant, and it's only 2 points. You can exhaust the card to discard that damage card without resolving its effect. So as long as this is ready, I flip over a ship trait, critical effect. Oh, sorry, it's gone. That's really good. Does cost an engineering in order to be able to refresh this, but again, I have an idea for how we're going to refresh these things. But you do have to make sure, because there are going to be all of these different refresh cards, you don't want to get too many on a single ship. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So then our officer. For our officer, we're going to go with Wat Tambor. Wat Tambor is going to be nice. So you may spend up to 2 shields from any of your hull zones, or any one hull zone of another friendly ship at distance 1 to 5. That's a good distance. To gain twice that many additional engineering points. So as long as I'm at distance 1 to 5 of my comms frigate, I can take 2 shields from one hull zone there and get 4 engineering points. That's really good. And it's going to combo with another card that we're going to do here in a second. That's really good. My goal here is I want my opponent to focus on this ship so that I can use the Munificent and the hard sell that I'm going to do to help keep this Munificent alive. That's the goal. So then I want to do a support team, and for the support team I'm going to use the Battle Droid reserves. Now this is the card that's going to combo both with Watt and Tide of Progress. I think these three cards work pretty well together. And for this, you do have to spend in engineering, but I'm okay with that. I think this ship is going to be running a lot of engineering commands. We're going to be worried about pushing squadrons. I don't think the Munificents need a lot of nav. I'm not going to worry about running concentrate fire. Sometimes I'll dial up a concentrate fire because I think the fighting is going to start in turn 3. I'm not going to need engineering yet, so I'll throw that extra dice around 3, and then the rest of the time I'm engineering. It's just the way that I go. I'm a little bit more defensive minded with my ships. Other people are more aggro and go, a lot more offensive than I do. But you spend the engineering, and if you do, and this can be either a token or the dial, flip any number of your face up damage cards with the crew trait face down. So already with the Tide of Progress, we're going to help with those ship critical effects. Now with the crew trait, I'm going to be able to flip those. I don't eliminate the damage, but I can flip them and ignore the effect. But also, and this is what combos with Wat Tambor, is discarding face down damage cards cost 1 fewer engineering points. So usually a face down, to get rid of it, it's 3 engineering points. To get back a shield, it's 2. So now getting rid of a damage card costs the same as getting a shield back, which is really strong. Now, with the Munificent, we have 4 engineering. With Wat Tambor, if we make everything work right, we're going to up that to 8 engineering. And with the Battle Droid reserves, that means we're going to be able to eliminate up to 4 face-down damage cards, which is really good. Now, granted, at 4, you're going to be pretty close to being dead and out of the game anyways. But if you're at that point, 4, and they're gone, right? Or if you only have 2 damage cards on you, you can get rid of 2 and then get 2 shields back in whatever your most vulnerable zone is. So really good. You're really boosting the survivability of the ship. And then we're going to do one more thing to boost survivability. And we're going to talk about this. Remember all of these refresh cards. We have to think about that. So with this, I would usually go with ECMs, especially with the Munificent, because the Munificent has 3 different defense tokens, which means it's going to be easy to accuracy, which makes ECMs really strong. The reason why I'm not going to go with ECMs is because it now has an exhaust with a cost to refresh. And that cost to refresh is that engineering token. All of these different things with engineering tokens to refresh, you can only... It's 1 card per token, so you have to pick one. It's just not going to work in this build. Yeah, I'd like to do it, but I'm going to go with Reinforced Blast Doors instead. So Reinforced Blast Doors, at the start of the ship phase, you can discard the card to discard up to 3 of your face-down damage cards. So more damage cards. We're trying to slough off as many damage cards as we can off of this ship. Hopefully as quickly as we can. Now we only have 6 hulls, so it's gonna be a little game of cat and mouse in terms of, can you keep that damage off before your opponent is able to eliminate you. Now I am going to do an ion cannon for this one, and I'm gonna do an ion cannon that I rarely have ever run, but I think it's going to see a lot more play in Armada with the new rules. With all of these new cards that have to refresh with tokens, token play is going to be a much bigger deal. So I'm going to go with the ion cannon batteries. And with this one, when I have a blue crit, I can choose and discard 1 command token from the defender if the defender... If I want to, I can get rid of a command token. Now they can't use that token to refresh if they wanted to, or they can't use it as the command. They can't do anything. because I have now eliminated that token, which is pretty good. This does have a secondary effect, so that if my opponent doesn't have a command token, the defending hull zone loses a shield instead. So that's pretty good. So we still have potential for an effect there if they don't have a command token. So I like this one a lot. I think it's going to see more play. We'll have to see. This is a little bit of an experiment on my part. And then for our turbo laser, we are going to do turbo lasers. And for this one, I really thought about doing quad battery turrets. And my thing is, I don't want these ships going speed 1. I always get into trouble if you're going slow and you end up in the middle of the fight scrum, you're just not going to last very long. So now, granted, these guys can only go speed 2, which isn't great, but that's probably where I'm going to be running on them the majority of the time. And because of that, and because of all the red dice, I'm going to stick with Link Turbo Laser Towers on this one. I'm going to have a really hard time not taking Turbo Laser Towers on Munificence. So there's our 2 main fighting ships. Now I want one more support ship, because we can get up to 270 some odd points, and then we can use our squadrons. Squadrons we can only use up to 134 points for squadrons. Now you can use 400 points for ships if you want. You don't have to use those points for squadrons, but I think at least initially you're going to want to use the majority of those points for squadrons. So the last ship that we're going to do a hard cell class transport. This is the ship that I think, I love the Munificent, but this one version of the hard cell is really intriguing to me, especially, with the titles and things. This is like a support ship on steroids almost. It is a bit expensive to be a support ship at 47 points, but like I said, it's a support ship on steroids. It's got 5 hull, it's got 3 engineering, which is pretty good. This one's got the 2 squadrons too, so this guy can actually help push your squadrons a little bit as well. Let's build them out and we'll talk about them as we go. So we've got 2 officers, especially on a small ship, that's pretty rare. 2 officers period is pretty rare. And then we've got our support team, our fleet support, and our title. So let's start with the title. And for the titles, we're going to go with Beast of Burden. Great support title. The only one slight drawback to this one. When you activate, you may exhaust this card, and it's a free exhaust, so that's pretty good. You can spend 1 or more of your defense tokens to choose up to that many defense tokens on a friendly ship at distance 1 to 3. That's a little bit of a restriction there. And ready those defense tokens. So this is great. So you're hopefully keeping this guy back a little bit. Hopefully he's not the one that's going to be seeing the brunt of the fight. But he can help your other ships in order to be able to keep going. To be able to reuse that brace if they need to, or reuse their redirect or their salvo, whatever it is. So one of the Munificents takes a big shot with the first activation. Well, you activate this one, you reflip all of their defense tokens so that they're ready to take another shot. I think that's pretty good. It is range 1 to 3. Not super close, but not 1 to 5. 1 to 5 is great. You can be almost anywhere on the board, it feels like, when you're playing, and be within 1 to 5. 1 to 3, you have to be a little bit more methodical about your activations and how things are going to work. Because if this is if you're at 1 to 3 and then you activate your Munificent and it moves out of the 5, well, now you can't use the ability. So you have to be a little bit careful on your placement and movements and things like that. But good card. Now we're going to go with our 2 officers. Now our 2 officers, we're going to go with one of them. We're going to use that T-Series tactical droid again in order to be able to get a second command. I see this guy, and it's going to depend on the game. Now, he's only a 1 command ship, so you can run whatever command that you want every turn, which is great. I think based on how things are going, probably earlier on, we're probably going to be running more squadron commands with this. Later on, potentially some navs, potentially some engineerings, maybe even a concentrate fire here or there, depending on how things are going. But the T-Series tactical droid is just going to give us that 1 extra command. But then I'm going to use Rune Hako on here. Now, he's probably not the best for the hard sell because Rune Hako lets you pull as many tokens to your ship from another ship as you can. Well, you can only hold 1 token on the hard sell, so he's not the best choice for the hard sell. And I said that when I went through the hard sell article. He's not the best choice. In terms of this list, I don't think he's a great choice on either of the Munificents either. But I do think he combos really well with the T-Series because we're going to be able to put 2 tokens on this guy. I'll have to think about it. Like I said, I'll probably be running. I'm not going to put engineering on here, and I'll tell you why. But maybe nav. Maybe squadron. We'll have to wait and see. And then what we're gonna do is we're going to do the parts resupply. So this is a new one. So CommsNet was really good CommsNet is a really good option here, but with CommsNet you have to token your dial and then send it, so you're not getting your own dial. With parts resupply and munitions resupply, you can send these tokens out and use your own command at the same time. So I think that's pretty good. And because of our other ships have a lot of engineering token refresh cards, I think the parts resupply is the way to go here. And I think, and I have one other. So I did want to do my support team. So I am going to put projection experts on this. It says I may spend up to 2 engineering points to move that many shields from your ship to a friendly ship at 1 to 5. So let's talk about that. So with this, Wat Tambor, he's going to be pulling shields probably from the comms frigate. Well, now with projection experts, I can send those back to the comms frigate. Now, I can only do that so much. We don't have a lot of shields on this, but I'm hoping that, again, this ship isn't going to be taking the brunt of the attacks. And I expect to only have to be able to use this a couple of times, and that's fine. But this comboed with the T-Series and Rune Hako and parts resupply, I should have those be able to run engineering commands when I need to use this in order to send it. And then I'll still get my squadron command, and that's what I think with this list. It's going to be squadron and engineering most of the time for all of the ships. I don't see running nav a lot, potentially with the hard sell, because the hard sell isn't, if both of the Munificents are going at speed 2, that means the hard cell is probably going to also be going at speed 2, but slightly less maneuverable. So I may occasionally have to run a nav command on this to keep it in range for all of these effects. But for the most part, that's what I see. I see engineering and squadron. And maybe early on, even with the Star Frigate, I might be running a squadron command like turn 3, or so, in order to do that one big alpha strike with all of the squadrons. So let's get to the squadron. So we're at 290 points. So we went a little bit over our minimum with ships. But that's okay. Only 3 activations. It's a low number of activations. So we'll just have to see how this goes. So we're going to add our squadrons. I'm going to start right with Grievous. He's a really strong squad. I didn't expect him to be as good as I think he is. But I think he's going to be really good. I didn't expect to be running expensive squadrons with Separatists, but I do think that he's probably worth the points. So first of all, while attacking a ship or squadron with no ready defense tokens, so he's going to be super good. I mean, he's going to just be wiping out generic squadrons like nobody's business because they don't have any ready defense tokens. He's going to just wipe out squadrons. Each of your crit icons adds 1 damage to the total. That's really good. And even late game, you might be able to, you might have an enemy ship that has lost all of its defense tokens, or at least has taken a big shot and has had to use all their defense tokens. And then Grievous will be able to swoop in, throw that 1 black, and if he gets the hit crit, he's doing 2 damage. He's not getting the critical damage, but he's still getting 2 damage through. So that's really good. He's got the Relay 2, which is super good when you want to be pushing the squadrons. It just creates a nice bubble of additional activation space for you, as long as you... And so Grievous you want to keep back, so he's in range of your squadron activating ships, but then he can push out that activation bubble a little bit in order to activate other squadrons. And his screen ability is really good. That's going to make him a lot more survivable as well. And then in terms of our other squadrons, I do think that DIS T81 is, after Grievous, probably my the next squadron I'm most excited about for the Separatists. He's Tri-Fighter. My attacks can't be obstructed. He's got the AI Anti-Squadron 1, Counter 2, Snipe 3, and that's where his ability comes in really big, plus he's Swarm. So if you can get the squadron attack going near enough to an obstacle, or even on one side of a small ship, well, he can either park on the obstacle or on the other side of a small ship, where he's obstructed from taking a shot, but when he's shooting, he's not losing anything. Just remember, when you're sniping, you're not getting your usual squadron pool. It's all blue dice instead of... But I think that's an even trade-off on this one. I think it's an even trade-off. 3 blue to a rainbow, I think it's a fairly even trade-off. Maybe slight downgrade, but not significant. But you can still use the AI ability to get that 1 extra blue dice in this case. Plus he's Swarm, so you can get rerolls. I think he's really good. Plus his Scatter Ace. Seems like the Separatists are the ones that got the Scatter Aces, like the Empire, and the Republic got the braces, as I call them, the BR Aces, the braces, the brace ability, the brace token type squadrons. They also have now the new evade squadrons as well on the Republic side. But Scatter is always going to be good. I think this guy's going to be pretty survivable, at least initially. He's going to be somebody that your opponent's not going to want to attack as much. Going to be able to do a lot of damage. I think he's going to be good, especially in the anti-squadron phase, but he also has that black dice in the ship side, so let's see. Then we had the Horchal prototypes. So I wanted to do this one. So this is a unique droid fighter. Before an enemy ship or squadron at distance 1 moves, you may perform an attack against that ship or squadron even if you are engaged. So I did this guy based on the objectives that I took as well. And I don't think his ability is going to trigger often on squadrons, but it may trigger fairly often on ships because ships always have to move. Squadrons, a lot of times you lock them down, and because of the intel nerf, it's going to be harder for them to be able to move while they're in range of you. But ships are always going to move. Even if they move and collide, they still moved. And so you're going to be able to throw that red dice at a ship as long as you're within range of it. There's the AI anti-squadron and swarm and scatter. Scatter's always good. And then the name that sounds a little bit dirty, the Flak Arfok prototypes. I won't say that too many times because it's just not going to come out right. After an enemy squadron enters activation distance 1, that squadron suffers 1 damage. I think he's pretty good. He might be one of those squadrons that your opponent is trying to eliminate quickly because he's just doing free damage. As soon as you come in to attack him, unless it's a snipe type of a thing, as soon as you come in to attack him, you're taking a damage. Now you don't, I guess technically, at the end of its activation, so if you have 1 damage, you can come in, get a shot off, but then you're going to suffer damage. So there's an order of operations there. You'll still get your attack if you only have 1 damage and you want to come in and shoot. That's fine. But as soon as your activation ends, you're going to suffer damage. That's going to put a target on this guy. That he's going to be somebody that your opponent's going to want to eliminate. Anti-Squadron 1, Counter 2. So not only are you going to come in to try and eliminate him, take a damage for that, you're also going to get Counter 2 back at you. So 2 dice thrown back at you, plus the swarm, so you can be able to reroll one of those blues in the counter. He's aggro all the way, but so aggro that your opponent is not going to want to see this guy on the board for very long. And then to round out my squadrons, so I have now used my 4 aces with defense tokens. Now currently with the Republic and the Separatists, all of our aces have defense tokens, or unique squadrons all have defense tokens. With the Empire and the Rebels, we do have unique squadrons without defense tokens, and we could add those if we end up getting those for the Separatists. But right now we have to concentrate on our on our generics, and I am just going to go with 4 vulture droids. I think that's a pretty good. So I didn't go with any bombers, and that could end up being a problem. Am I going to be able to get enough damage on my opponent in order to win the game? That's going to be the question. I think I have a pretty good anti-squadron ball, but how much is it going to help me against ships? I do have a few ships with the black anti-ship, even though they're not bomber, and that will help a little bit. But we'll just have to wait and see how this shakes out. I might regret not going with any bombers. And finally, let's go with the objectives here. So the first one, I like surprise attack a lot. Now I could go with gunnery team, with advanced gunnery. Advanced gunnery can backfire on you a little bit too, though. So I don't always go with that. Most wanted isn't a great choice here because even the hard sell is expensive, so I wouldn't want to go with most wanted. But I like surprise attack with this one. And with surprise attack, so if I'm the second player, so if we're playing my objectives, I'm the second player. The second player places the station at distance 1 to 5 of the first player's edge, then place the remaining obstacles as normal. While deploying fleets, the first player must deploy their flagship before deploying any other ships. So you're going to find out where your opponent is going to be putting their flagship right from the get-go. And the flagship must overlap the station, even if that flagship extends beyond their deployment zone. So you're actually pulling their flagship out from their deployment zone, and you're going to know exactly where it's going to be. Wherever you place that station, your opponent is going to be putting their flagship there. So you're really dictating your deployment, at least the initial deployment of your opponent. I think that's pretty strong. That way we know where we want to line things up in order to get out and attack. But beyond that, remember with Dooku, we have 3 raids. Well, with surprise attack, after deploying fleets, the second player, being me, places 3 face down command dials, and so these are hidden. Unlike Dooku, which is known to my opponent, these are hidden. Then at the start of the ship phase, during the first, second, and third rounds, the second player reveals the top command on his dial, and each of the first player's ships gains a raid token matching that dial. That's pretty good. If my opponent goes with this, it might change what I'm going to go with raid for Dooku, the ones where I'm telegraphing. Now, for the first turn with this objective, I wouldn't go with 2 raids. I wouldn't do a Dooku and a surprise attack, because then my opponent is just going to spend all their dials in order to get rid of both of them. I want them to only have one and have to think about it. So that's probably what I'd do. And I'd focus on some combination of Squadron in both of them. Get those Squadron raid tokens. With this, I could do a Squadron raid token in 5 out of 6 rounds. That's pretty good. Would really hamper a Squadron heavy fleet. So I like that one. With Dooku especially. And then what we have for the yellow, sorry, I'm just using my notes. For the yellow, we're going to go with Asteroid Tactics. And for these, I like these because this one, it uses the Exogorths. So the second player places all obstacles excluding the station. So I get to place all the obstacles. So I get to dictate the board a little bit. When one of the first player's ships or unique squadrons, so they're getting a benefit out of this, overlaps an asteroid field, it may recover one of its non-scatter defense tokens. That token must be exhausted. So that's fine. That's big for squadrons. For ships, it's a little bit tough because in order to get the effect, you're going to have to take a hit from the asteroid. And the asteroid is going to do a face-up crit to the ship. So your opponent's probably not going to want to do that a lot with their ships, but they'll definitely want to do it with their squadrons. And then when one of the second player's ships or unique squadrons overlaps an asteroid field, that obstacle has no effect. So I can run into asteroids as much as I want and not have an effect. That ship or squadron may recover one of its non-scatter defense tokens or may ready one of its defense tokens. So I can get my defense tokens back. If I have my defense tokens, I can ready them. It's all pretty good. After the start of each squadron phase, after the Exogorths have performed attacks, remove each Exogorth obstacle from the play area. Now, you notice in the setup, it didn't have me put down Exogorths. So I think I haven't played Asteroid Tactics a lot, but I'm pretty sure that means for the first round, there will be no Exogorths. So my opponent doesn't have to worry about the Exogorths attacking his squadrons that first turn, which is probably appropriate, seeing that I'm the one that's going to be placing the Exogorths. And then at the end of the round, the second player places 2 Exogorth obstacles, each touching a different obstacle. So I can see putting these on the asteroids, because if my opponent is using the asteroids to reclaim their defense tokens for their squadrons, that means the Exogorths are going to get an attack on their squadrons, and if they're on the asteroid that is touching the Exogorth, they're not obstructed. So they're taking a big risk by throwing their squadron back over there. So I do think Asteroid Tactics is appropriate, especially when I feel like there's going to be a larger squadron presence in the game, especially right away. And finally, our navigation. For navigation, we are going to, for similar reasons, we're going to go with infested fields. Infested fields place obstacles as normal, excluding the station. After placing obstacles, place 1 objective token on each obstacle. Then the second player places the 2 Exogorth obstacles, each touching a different obstacle. So this one, we will have the Exogorths out there turn 1. When a ship or squadron overlaps an obstacle, that ship or squadron owner may remove the objective token on that obstacle to gain a victory token. Okay, now you're still going to suffer the effect of that obstacle. At the start of each squadron phase, after Exogorths perform attacks, remove each Exogorth from the play area. Then the second player moves the obstacle each Exogorth was touching to within distance 1 to 2 of its current location. So I'm going to be able to move obstacles, and for each Exogorth obstacle not in the play area, the second player chooses an obstacle and places 1 Exogorth touching that. So I'm going to be able to move obstacles and replace Exogorths. That's pretty good. My guess is this is the one that a lot of players are going to pick, unless they don't have any squadrons at all. But I feel like this one, because I'm going to take the effect of the obstacles as well. This is probably where they're going to be focusing. What I would probably do is try and get a couple of the debris fields nearer me, because I feel like those do a little bit, they're just doing shield damage, and I'm going to be running engineering anyways, and I'll be able to get that back. I wouldn't be trying to get all of the tokens. You're only going to have 5 obstacles out there. I feel like if I can get 2 of them, I'll probably win or at least tie this part of the game. We just have to wait and see. But that's what I'm going to go with. Call this Sep 1 and save. And then, so after you do this, you can copy it. If you want to make some minor modifications, but you don't want to lose this list, you can do that. you can get a text thing. So this is how, if you want to share this with people on forums or on Facebook or something else, you go here, you can copy your list, cut and paste it, send it off so other people can look at it, and you can print it off when you're doing tournaments and things like that. And then this X would be to delete the list. So this is kind of what I'm thinking of early to start. You know, what do you think? What kind of things are you going to run? What mistakes have I made? Do you think I made a mistake? Should I have gone with more bombers? You know, do you think I should have been a little bit more aggro with my ships? You know, well, whatever you think. I mean, there's no right or wrong. I could end up playing this and I just get destroyed. So we'll have to wait and see. I am going to try and play this one the first time I can play a 400 point list with the Separatists, and I'll report back how we did. Thank you very much. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.